170, 180, 90 I can't count fast enough.
Welcome to the world's first drive of the Ferrari F80. It's the successor to the LaFerrari, which in turn is the successor to the Enzo, and thus it is a very big deal. Even for the wizened road testers and reviewers who have seen it all, done it, and got the t-shirt 3 times over, this is arguably the car launch of the decade.
I am excited. Lee, the photographer who's shooting this for the magazine piece, is excited. Joe behind the camera, he can barely keep his hands steady. After all, this is a €3.5 million, 1200 brake horsepower car that's limited to 799 units. And guess what? They're all gone. This is Ferrari putting its cards on the table in 2025 and showing us exactly what it can do.
Don't think, however, that I'm gonna give this car an easy ride. Sure, the numbers are impressive, and the engine shares many parts with the one that just conquered Le Mans for the 3rd time in a row, but all of that expectation means the F80 can't be anything short of astounding. This is the model that will define the company's road cars for the next decade. If it misses the mark, it'll be a dark cloud hanging over Maranello. Clearly, it's a lot of pressure, and I'm about to ramp it up a bit.
I don't think this is as good looking as the Enzo or the LaFerrari, and maybe I'm being naive in thinking it could be, but you can definitely tell that this is a design that's been led by aerodynamics, and Ferrari's admitted that, because while the basic shape and the shape that we saw in some of the early sketches is lovely, there's definitely a few angles on it which make it look quite square-sided from some angles and can also make the car look heavier from certain angles. Now, for what it's worth, I think the McLaren W1, which is this car's most obvious rival, suffers from the same issues in terms of styling. It's definitely not an ugly car, but equally, there's been prettier Ferraris of the past 10 or 20 years.
Still, all of that aero work does deliver some outstanding results both on paper and in practice on the Misano circuit.
So the F80 is making 1,050 kilograms of downforce at 155 miles an hour. Now, to give that some sort of context, a 911 GT3 RS with the Manthey racing kit is making a similar amount, but at 177 miles an hour. And given how easy it is to reach those speeds in this car, you can really feel it working. It feels like we're on a Scalextrics track. Now, Ferrari quotes a dry weight of 1,525 kilograms. But when you're traveling at 155 miles an hour, and with all the fuel on board and me, that means that the car is effectively putting about 2.6 tons into the tarmac.
In order to deliver all of that downforce, the F80 employs a number of tricks, such as a totally flat underbody, front triplane wing, gurney flaps, and S-duct, plus an active rear wing and massive diffuser at the rear. Furthermore, the active suspension, which we'll get onto later, is tasked with keeping the ride height consistent, something that's absolutely crucial when it comes to producing the all-important ground effect.
At the front end alone, there's 460 kilograms of downforce at 155 miles an hour. And part of that is down to the way that the airflow goes in via the triplane wing configuration. It's then redirected upwards by the S-duct, and the resultant upwash means that you get an area of low pressure underneath the underbody, and that's what helps create the downforce. You've also got a gurney flap in there, which is hidden and works much like a DRS system on an F1 car, and that can open or close and create more or less downforce as needed.
Meanwhile, the packaging of the area around the driver's feet means there's space for 3 pairs of barge boards. These generate powerful vortices which improve downforce, but also keep the wake off the front wheels away from the underbody, thus preventing contamination of the airflow headed to the rear of the car.
There's 590 kilograms of downforce back here at 155 miles an hour, and that's thanks to the combination of the diffuser and the active rear spoiler. Now this spoiler can change the height by up to 200 millimeters and also the angle of attack by up to 11 degrees, depending on what situation you're in. So if you're braking heavily into the corner, it'll go to maximum downforce mode, whereas if you're accelerating out and you reach a certain speed and you're in a straight line, it'll go into its slipperiest setting. But unlike the gurney flap at the front, which is either on or off, this is infinitely adjustable, and it's doing that as you're driving around the track. It's always changing depending on the situation. And that diffuser, just because it isn't active, doesn't mean it's not impressive. It's 1.8 meters long, which is actually longer than me, and it's also more than half of the entire length of the underbody of the car. And it's actually 3 times the length of the one in the LaFerrari, so it makes a huge difference.
Ferrari's pinning a lot on the F80's aero, but that's not especially new. The Enzo, for example, generated 775 kilograms of downforce at 186 miles an hour, an impressive number now, let alone 20 years ago. But what the Enzo didn't have is the F80's trick active suspension.
It's got a reworked version of the system that's on the Pura Sangue, so you've got 48-volt electric motors on each corner, and they are completely independent. That means there's no need for anti-roll bars. You've got better and more precise control of the suspension, and also less unsprung mass.
This isn't a particularly light car, it's about 300 kilograms more than the Enzo, but because the suspension can effectively shift the weight around and maintain a consistent ride height, it makes the F80 feel like it has almost no inertia. What's more, by keeping the ride height consistent, the aero hardware is able to work at maximum efficiency at all times. Braking into a corner, the dampers can essentially exert an upward force on the front and pull the rear down in order to manipulate the weight and keep the car flat. And yet, there's still no loss of rotation when you come off the throttle mid-corner, for example. The tech is one thing, but the calibration also feels spot on.
I mean, clearly it makes a difference that we're on the optional Cup 2R tyres, but I've got to say the braking from the ABS Evo system with its longer carbon fibre threads is phenomenal. I mean, Ferrari's very, very good at keeping a really good brake pedal feel, despite the fact that there is recharging of the hybrid system from the brakes. But it's the power of the braking. You can just stand on the pedal, you don't need to threshold brake, and it just sorts itself out. Ooh.
Ferrari's worked with Brembo for the brakes on the F80, and they feature CCM R+ technology. Longer carbon fibre strands means the discs are twice as strong as before, with thermal conductivity up by 300%. And sure enough, durability on track, even in the Italian heat, was colossal.
Speaking of heat, one of the main challenges with the F80 was to come up with a cooling system that could dissipate up to 200 kilowatts of thermal energy without impacting the aerodynamics or the overall packaging.
Much of this has been achieved by fitting 3 radiators for the V6. 2 are situated laterally in outboard positions, while the third is in the centre and makes use of the upwash generated by the car's front aero config. You'll also spot super aggressive large intakes on the car's shoulders, made possible thanks to the narrow cockpit.
There's a couple of smaller heat management tricks as well. So for example, there's a transparent film across the windscreen, and what that does is it demists it using the 48-volt system, so I don't have to put extra load on the HVAC system. Another trick, down here you've got the impact absorbing chassis longerons. Great name. And they're also hollow, so what they do is take the high energy cold airflow from the front of the car and they channel it down towards the brakes. That means you get 20% more airflow than you did on the LaFerrari, but it doesn't impact the aerodynamics. It's very clever.
Does it work? Well, yes, it appears to. The Ferrari didn't overheat or catch fire during our track session, despite regular heavy braking and speeds in excess of 180 miles an hour. The bigger question, no doubt, is what it's like getting to those speeds.
So let me give you some numbers. The 3-litre V6 with 2 electric turbochargers produces 888 brake horsepower at 8,750 RPM. It redlines at 9,200 RPM.
However, when you add in the 3 electric motors, one on each front wheel, meaning all-wheel drive, and one underneath the engine, total system output is 1,183 brake horsepower and around 800 pounds-foot of torque. 0 to 62 miles an hour takes 2.15 seconds. 0 to 124 miles an hour is 5.75 seconds.
Wow! I mean, it's already a phenomenally fast car with that internal combustion engine figure, but you add the electric motors in and the power and the surge of forward motion is just relentless. There's no gaps, there's no delay, it's just an onslaught of speed. Second gear now, right, third, fourth, 60, 170, 180, 90, I can't count fast enough. Jeez. I must say as well that the sound is a lot better inside than it is outside the car. But I think you know what I'm about to say. There is engine sound coming through the speakers. Make of that what you will.
As you can probably hear from the onboards, the 8-speed DCT gearbox is a real highlight. The changes are rifle quick and it rarely rejects a down change. It essentially feels like a GT3 racing car gearbox, but without any of the rough edges associated with something designed for the track.
I was very keen to see what this is like versus the SF90 and the SF90XX because they were very, very capable, but I wasn't the biggest fan of the way that they sometimes felt quite clinical. This is a lot more intuitive, it feels a lot friendlier, it doesn't roll as much either. You've got the anti-dive tech, and that means that it's incredibly flat with that completely independent suspension thrown in as well. It's a very friendly thing to drive. It's also about 5 seconds quicker, by the way, than a LaFerrari around Fiorano, which is a huge improvement. I've got to say though that the way it delivers its excitement is through the level of performance that you are achieving. It's not one element that's giving you the thrill like you would get with a V12 engine. It's rather the whole package and the way that you can attain such unbelievable levels of speed and get there quite easily. This feels like the kind of car that you have to drive within its limits. It won't thank you for driving it over, for ragging it. You've got to be precise to get the most out of it.
In short, the F80 is the most polished, track-focused hypercar I have ever driven. It laps at the speed of a racing car. Indeed, Ferrari reckons it's quicker than its slickshod 296 Challenge model, but it does so with so much finesse. And yet, Maranello admits that only a very small percentage of F80 customers will take the car on track. So, the big question is, what's it like on the public road? Well, I am going to answer that in a second, but first, I want to talk about the cabin because it's arguably one of Ferrari's best in years.
This is what Ferrari calls its 1+ cabin design, and you can kind of see what they're talking about because everything is angled towards the driver. It's supposed to feel like a single-seater as much as possible. The passenger is set a little bit further back so that the elbows aren't clashing, and it means that the cabin is 50mm narrower than the LaFerrari. What it also means, because the chassis is asymmetric, is that Ferrari had to crash test the car from both sides, which must have been pretty expensive, but apparently the benefits were completely worth it. The steering wheel is also worth pointing out because it's a very different shape than what we're used to. It's got a completely flat top and bottom. It's beautifully trimmed and it's really nice to hold in your hands with these big long carbon paddles behind it. But crucially, it's also got actual buttons. They've got rid of the touchpad controls on the steering wheel, and that is fantastic because it's one of the worst bits of recent Ferraris with those touchpad buttons, and this is far better. Lastly, the driving position is based on the 499 hypercar, and it is absolutely spot on. You are very, very low down. You feel like you're more central than you are, and the visibility out, at least out front, is very good. Obviously at the back you haven't got anything, but there is a digital rear view mirror.
Okay, now onto the road driving, and this is where Ferrari's press and marketing team deserves some credit, because often on car launches, especially those with a track focus, we're funneled off towards the kind of marble smooth roads that you rarely get in the UK or North America. It's just not representative. But the roads we went on today are honestly some of the worst I have ever seen on a car launch. Has Ferrari shot itself in the foot with this decision? No, not at all.
I am so impressed with how good the ride is on road. We've seen how balanced and controlled the car is on track. And honestly, these roads are utterly terrible. But the active dampers are doing a brilliant job of not getting rid of everything, because you can still feel that you're on a rough, bad, bumpy road, but there's no harshness coming into the cabin. It's just the right amount of information, and it's mainly coming in through the seat, but everything just feels really well controlled and well judged. And it doesn't matter whether you've got the dampers in hard, medium or soft, you've still got a ride that never feels like it's overwhelmed, it's never crashing through bumps, and it makes it surprisingly drivable on road. I mean, clearly we're going to have to get used to this tech just rewriting the rule book when it comes to having everything and almost none of the drawbacks, apart from the cost, of course. You can't have this on every car.
The gearbox is also brilliantly judged for road use. We've seen how fast and responsive it is on track, yet leave it in auto and it's as silky smooth as you could possibly want. Yes, there's a little bit of roll on hills, but otherwise it's almost flawless for everyday use.
I've also got good visibility, the driving position works well. I'd rather have proper indicator stalks, but the buttons, they work okay. And I've also got to say that the seat is super comfortable. Some Ferrari seats I've found a bit Marmite. Some people really like them, I'm not so sure, but this is really comfortable as soon as you get in it, and it holds you in perfectly.
The seat is easily adjustable through the base and backrest, while the steering column comes out towards you so you can have the wheel properly close. Ergonomically, it is superb. I would, however, like to see longer gear shift paddles. For short shifting through right-hand corners, the column-mounted paddle isn't quite long enough and makes you take your hand off an otherwise ergonomically excellent steering wheel.
My main issue with driving this car on the road is A, just watching out for the nose, but you can't criticise a hypercar for having a low nose, and B, the width of it. It is very, very wide and it feels it. So when you're committing yourself to a corner, you just have to be really careful about where it's positioned. If something comes the other way, just like it did then, you've got to make sure you're right the way over.
I truly believe that you can enjoy this car on the road, however, and one of the reasons for that is that you can enjoy the power. The different drive modes do a brilliant job at metering it out and not making the speed feel too intimidating. Like many other elements of this car, it is a carefully judged line between usability and excitement.
Also, and I think this is more important to why this car works in a road setting, are the controls. The brake pedal, we spoke about it on track, but it is sublime. Brilliant feel, it's not too grabby, it's super powerful. I mean, 10 out of 10. But also the steering and the sensation that you get from the front end of the car. Like all recent mid-engine Ferraris, it has an incredible front end. It's so responsive, the steering is just brilliantly judged. I think it's got a bit more feel than other modern Ferraris I've driven. It's never been their strongest point, but this I think is pretty good.
It's the speed at which the front end responds that's so addictive. I mean, I'll reiterate it again, this is a terrible road, but when you get a moment to just put your foot down, it makes it all the more special. You're just finding those little opportunities when you can stretch it out. And then in the bits in between, you just have the lovely controls and the driving position and the theatre of the cockpit as well that makes it a special experience, even when you're basically going at about 20% of what the car can do.
There is an argument that the F80 works so well on road because you're relishing the rare and tantalising opportunities to get a glimpse at the car's outright ability, while everything in between is far more civilised and enjoyable than it has any right to be. Out on track, meanwhile, almost everything is revealed very quickly. You can build it up to around 90% without much difficulty.
I think there's two ways of looking at how well this car works on road. You can either say Ferrari's done a brilliant job to make it still accessible, so accessible as a road car, but you could also say, could they have pushed the balance more towards it being an extreme track weapon? Could it have been a bit crazier, a bit more eccentric on track, and maybe given away some of the road usability?
Ferrari markets the F80 as a racing car for the road, whereas for me, it feels more like a road car with incredible ability on the circuit, which, given how few customers will take the F80 on track, is understandable. Regardless of how you look at it though, the F80 is, without doubt, a masterpiece. It's a technological benchmark that just gets better the more you drive it. It's a lesson in how to properly integrate a hybrid powertrain and a clear step forward from anything that Ferrari has delivered before with an electric motor. In short, for anyone that needs reminding, it's your once-in-a-decade refresher that nobody builds a performance car quite like Maranello.